I'm 68 tomorrow and my teenage fantasy has finally been realised. Not only do I get to ride this beautiful two-stroke 250 Yamaha, but later on today I get to ride the Norton Commando. My absolute dream bike since I was a teenager. But of course I could never afford one. During the video you'll hear some of the two-stroke, but I'll feature the Yamaha on another video. Unfortunately, the video sound really doesn't do the Norton Commando justice. It is just a symphony. It's a beautiful spring day here in Australia and I couldn't think of a better thing to be doing. Of course, we've been riding up to Jerry's Cafe for breakfast. And because it's a Friday, there'll be a few other old bikes as well.
Everything good?
Just takes some remembering the gear change.
It's 55 kilometres to Jerry's and we've arrived without incident. And of course the welcoming committee is here to greet us. Delmore the Dalmatian. Unfortunately his little mate Harley was killed by a car a couple of months ago and we all miss him. Well, let's have a look at this beautiful machine. 1973 Norton Commando. And yes, I've muted the sound so we can concentrate on this beautiful piece of art. You'll notice that unlike most British bikes, it doesn't mark its territory. It's been restored back into better than original condition. And it's got a single Makuni carburetor on it, which is much more efficient and a lot easier to maintain than the old dual carbies that were on it originally. And it's got electronic ignition, so it's easy to start. Well, when I say easy, I mean it's kickstart only, and it requires a real man to give it a bit of a kick. Which is excellent, because it means that only real men can ride it. I said it was my teenage fantasy to ride it, but will the fantasy live up to reality? Or will I be disappointed? It's time to find out if I'm a real man and whether I'll be disappointed. Oh dear, not going well. How about a bit of choke? That might be the trick. This certainly has a bit of compression, but yeehaw! And I can't wipe the stupid smile off my face. So off we go for 55 kilometres of joy or disappointment. Which one's it going to be? I'm guessing you already know. From the first few seconds of riding it away from the cafe, I can already feel what a fantastic machine this is. It's got the traditional British 1-up, 3-down gearbox on the right hand side, so I've got to keep my brain into gear. My first road motorcycle was a 1955 AJS 500 twin, so I'm not completely unfamiliar with the British motorcycle. Oh dear, I just realised it was 50 years ago. That old AJS was a basket case when I bought it, and it was a basket case when I sold it. It was not a good motorcycle. And therefore I didn't have high expectations of riding the Norton Commando, although the Commando is quite a bit newer. Okay, we're coming into some twisty stuff, although the GoPro smooths it out. how does the Norton handle on the road? Well, surprisingly, it handles very well. It's nice and tight, there's no wandering. The suspension is relatively short, but it's not uncomfortable. Like almost every motorcycle of the era, it's a sit on top of the motorcycle, whereas a lot of bikes today is you sort of sit inside them. But the seating position and the reach to the bars is nice and neutral. Both pistons move up and down together, unlike most of today's twins that are 270-degree crank. And of course there's no balancer shaft to smooth out the vibrations. However, once the bike's up into cruising mode of 60 to 80 kilometres an hour and above, it's surprisingly smooth. Yes, it does vibrate, but it's not a high buzzing vibration like you get with some bikes today. It just tells you that there's a real motorcycle down there, waiting to be let loose. Yes, the clutch is heavy, but the gearbox is very smooth. Yes, it's a fairly long throw in the gearbox, but it's a joy to use, and no false neutrals. If you look closely, you can see the vision in the rear view mirror. What you can see is way better than what I can see. The GoPro smooths it right out. But when you're on the 850 Commando, you don't need to worry about what's behind you. The throttle is light, crisp, and very responsive. And the engine keeps saying, "Open that throttle, you wimp, I want to go faster." The gears are very tall, and it cruises along effortlessly at any speed. And even by modern standards, this bike handles very well. It tips into corners easily, holds its line, and doesn't wander, wallow, or tell you that things are going to get scary if you push it just a little bit further. The engine's happy to tootle along at slow speeds, but I wouldn't be wanting to ride this thing in traffic. I think the heavy clutch would really get to you after a while. You'd have to have a grip like a teenager. But what about the brakes, you ask? Well, probably the less said about the brakes the better. Again, like many of the bikes of this era, the brakes are not brilliant, and certainly quite poor by modern standards. The back brake works really well, the front brake, not so much. This is our favourite little bit of twisty road on the way home. Unfortunately, I couldn't give it its head because there's roadwork halfway through, so we just had to cruise through. Still, it was very pleasant on this bike, just tipping it into each corner and feeling it hold the line. It's what we used to term the bike handles like it's riding on rails. This is the speed in reality, and coming up is the speed that the bike would really want to do. Back to reality, but it's still fun. This bike has exceeded all my expectations. And it's one of those times when reality has far exceeded the fantasy. Thanks, Norman. Looking forward to the next ride.